Hi everyone, welcome to Abstemiously John. I'm John, licensed clinician, change facilitator, and your one-stop source for high-quality wellness content. I'm excited to be here because it's finally time we start talking about nicotine. In this video, I'll discuss exactly what it is, what it does, and the different types out there, but more importantly, why are you still smoking or vaping, and how can you cut down or stop today? I also share some professional experience from my counseling practice and a little bit about my personal journey pursuing freedom from nicotine as well. So like or comment below, check out the entire nicotine series on my channel, and please subscribe for more. First, let's clarify exactly what nicotine is. Nicotine in its natural form is an addictive stimulant drug produced in many plants in the Solanaceae or nightshade family. In fact, you most likely consume small quantities every day without even knowing it, as tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, bell peppers, and even the cocoa plant all contain trace amounts. Fear not, however, because it's supposed to be there, and the amount in vegetables is a mere fraction of what you would find in nicotine products. Also, keep in mind the nicotine content in foods is commonly measured in billionths of a gram instead of milligrams, which is thousands, and the common measurement used for vapes and cigarettes. This means you would have to eat about 10 pounds of eggplants to get the same level of nicotine as just one cigarette. Nicotine is considered a highly addictive parasympathomimetic substance with abilities to activate acetylcholine receptors and lead to large releases of dopamine and other neurotransmitters in the brain and body. As your body compensates, it becomes accustomed to the release of these reward chemicals and stimulating effects and can struggle to self-regulate without it. Because of this, nicotine is found in many habit-forming products like vaporizers, cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, chewing tobacco, snuff, and replacement products like gums and patches, all of which can cause lasting psychological and biological changes, making cessation difficult but not impossible. It is likely plants in the deadly nightshade family originally started containing nicotine because of these very effects as a natural defense against insects and other plant-eating animals. The stimulant basically sped up the bodily functions of these organisms until they experienced negative physical symptoms, dysphoria, and even death. Although minuscule levels are found in many plants, the infamous Nicotiana tabacum species contains among the most, on average about 1 to 3% nicotine by weight. For reference, a kilo of natural tobacco leaf can yield about 10,000 to 30,000 milligrams of nicotine, keeping in mind roughly 10 milligrams are in a cigarette, of which your body absorbs about 1.5 milligrams. This plant originated in the Americas, and since there was no strong smell or taste, early explorers looking for spices actually disregarded it completely. Shortly after, though, they realized why it was so highly prized by natives who had been using it and trading it for thousands of years prior. Demand quickly spread throughout the world and eventually became the multi-billion-dollar industry we're familiar with today. While higher repeated doses do have known negative side effects, specifically on the cardiovascular and respiratory system, for the most part, naturally occurring nicotine is not carcinogenic, and most of the negative effects are from the delivery systems like smoking and vaping and chewing and stuff. All of these can cause cancer. Repeated use and high doses of nicotine, however, often result in inflammation of the cells inside your arteries, causing damage and increasing the risk of heart attack, stroke, peripheral vascular disease, and other problems. Nicotine consumers should also be aware natural nicotine is not commonly found in most products on the market, and the majority can contain or can produce downright dangerous additives and byproducts. While the chemical nature of nicotine may lead to a substance use disorder, fear not, as I can speak firsthand on how possible it is to quit. Clients often like to point out the most addictive chemicals, and I like to say there's no such thing, as it's whatever you are currently trying to quit. Whether nicotine, alcohol, opioids, or anything else, you can greatly increase your odds of success by having a structured but flexible plan with measurable goals, a supportive network of peers, family, or professionals, and a productive strategy to manage triggers and urges when they arise. Increasing your knowledge about nicotine will also help you make better decisions and explain what to expect when quitting. When using vapes or e-cigs, users are generally exposed to either liquid nicotine salt or free-base nicotine, neither of which are found in nature and interact with the body differently than naturally occurring nicotine. Nicotine salt and free-base nicotine are both more potent synthetic versions and can be found in most mass-produced nicotine products. Since it was developed first, we'll start with freebase nicotine, which was created in the 60s when cigarette companies manipulated nicotine with salt-like diammonium phosphate to release ammonium or ammonia during combustion, changing natural nicotine to freebase form. Freebase nicotine, which is not named for how it's ingested by the way, is a modified form of naturally occurring nicotine, resulting in a substance with a more basic or higher pH level of around 8. Freebase nicotine was the standard active ingredient in cigarettes due to increasing the risk for developed nicotine use disorders by users. It then became the standard in early e-cigarettes and vape liquids. Cigarettes contain on average 10 milligrams freebase nicotine, while vape products usually contain about 3 milligrams per milliliter to 12 milligrams per milliliter nicotine. Usually, most freebase liquid vape juices stay below 12 milligrams per milliliter nicotine because the physical and psychological effects would be too intense, much like the poor insects and herbivores who succumb to its stimulant effects in nature. At first, vape and e-cig companies failed to compete with the intense buzz and addictive properties users got from combustion products like cigarettes. In order to increase market share, modern vape companies needed to find an active ingredient which could deliver the same intense rush without killing the user or allowing them to feel the pain in their throat, lungs, or respiratory system. Enter nicotine salt. The name salt comes purely from the scientific definition, a base that has been mixed with an acid. Large vape companies protonated nicotine with a chemical called benzoic acid, creating a form of nicotine which is absorbed into the bloodstream more effectively and is less painful to ingest. This means you can buy and consume much more of this addictive stimulant drug without feeling the negative effects like pain in the throat and chest. Additionally, it allows the user to handle higher levels of nicotine, like the 59 milligrams per milliliter found in mainstream cartridges, as opposed to the prior 12 milligrams per milliliter max. Basically, nicotine salt delivers a higher dose of the stimulant, is absorbed more quickly into the bloodstream, and lacks the immediate debilitating side effects on the nervous system and respiratory system as similar levels of natural nicotine or freebase nicotine would have. It also means the nicotine can release more reward chemicals in the brain and body, be felt much quicker, and in higher intensity than previous versions, just like a real cigarette. Overall, nicotine salt provides a more familiar effect and delivers more active chemicals to increase the risk of substance use disorder and create larger market shares. The ability to deliver huge amounts of this habit-forming chemical, in addition to possible predatory marketing strategies aimed at children and young adults, is why companies selling nicotine salt-based products became so popular so quickly and continue to dominate the market today. The differences between nicotine salt and freebase nicotine may also contribute to why people have mixed results when switching from smoking to vaping. Overall, my clients report, and I have found personally it easier to transition to nicotine salt as opposed to freebase nicotine, but more difficult to stop than freebase nicotine products. Vape users should also look at the titration or how they use the vape to consume nicotine. Many find themselves using it more frequently, taking larger hits, or for longer than they would a cigarette. Nicotine is an addictive stimulant drug produced naturally in many plants throughout the nightshade family. It has the ability to affect your breathing, memory, emotions, and heart rate, all of which are important to your survival and things you would probably want to keep stable. Although the biology is not fully understood, researchers have observed nicotine's impact on several neurotransmitters. In case you didn't already know, neurotransmitters are chemicals released in the space between neurons and carry messages throughout the body. Nicotine has shown changes in acetylcholine, dopamine, glutamate, and serotonin, just to name a few. Nicotine is a cholinergic chemical acting as an acetylcholine agonist. This means it has the ability to activate receptors which produce and regulate acetylcholine. Keep in mind, substances acting as an agonist increase activity of receptors, while antagonists decrease activity. After being consumed, nicotine quickly enters your bloodstream and depolarizes these acetylcholine receptors. Specifically, the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors found throughout your brain and body. This results in manipulation of other neurotransmitters and biological functions, while also contributing to the perceived feelings of mental stimulation. Dopamine is another neurotransmitter released and manipulated during this process. Dopamine fluctuation is observed in most rewarding or addictive behaviors as it makes you feel good. The newer research seems to indicate this neurotransmitter may also be involved in memory by helping you encode whatever you are doing at the time of its release due to it being perceived as rewarding and therefore important to your survival. Essentially, this chemical record button is pushed after doing something which appears rewarding, then helps you associate people, places, and things involved, leading to future triggers and urges, thus increasing the likelihood of you doing it again. This process is great for keeping you alive in the wild, to drive the motivation needed to get a promotion, or a diploma, or beat your best track time, but not great when trying to change a bad habit, especially relating to chemical reward. It's important to note you don't need to ingest psychoactive substances to cause increases in dopamine, as it can be released from gambling, sex, eating, risk-taking, and many other activities. Nicotine is especially effective at releasing dopamine in the reward pathway of your brain while simultaneously increasing glutamate to further speed up this release. Simultaneously, there is a decrease in inhibitory chemicals to prevent any decrease in dopamine levels while nicotine is present in your system. As part of your body's natural response to stress, or in this case the presence of nicotine, norepinephrine is released and affects the way your brain pays attention and responds to stressful events. This may contribute to the perceived stimulation, arousal, and feelings and associations with stress relief. A key question I like to ask my clients is what really happened to the stress? Most likely, nicotine did not pay your bills or improve any of your relationships, as it's not great at problem solving. It only gives you the perception it can solve your problems. While present in your body, nicotine also boosts serotonin, which is a chemical responsible for mood regulation, behavior, memory, sleep, and more. While all this is happening, the effects on the peripheral nervous system can increase heart rate, blood pressure, and activity in your gastrointestinal tracts, which is why some people may use the restroom after or during nicotine consumption. It also causes a release of epinephrine, which further enhances this activity. Frequent manipulation of these regulatory chemicals will inevitably desensitize neuroreceptors, increasing the body's tolerance after repeated use. Because of this, your body adjusts to maintain homeostasis, and in paradox with most other substances, nicotine causes the number of some receptor sites to increase rather than decrease. This is important because not only do receptors become less sensitive to nicotine, as I mentioned, but the number of receptor sites increases to accommodate the high levels of stimulant in the body. This increase in receptor sites is a process called upregulation. If you've seen my other videos, like the opioid videos, you may already be familiar with downregulation, which is when receptor sites decrease. Upregulation, however, is when receptor sites increase. Imagine these receptors as a hungry crowd, and then imagine this crowd suddenly doubles. This phenomenon may explain why people have intense cravings and why more nicotine is needed to activate the increased number of dopamine receptors. This could also help explain the intense cravings, tolerance, withdrawal, and other facets of the nicotine use disorder, in addition to why you may feel so terrible when trying to stop. Someone who regularly consumes nicotine to repeatedly cause these physiological changes is getting the chemical reward from the nicotine and not natural rewards like scoring a goal, getting a good test grade, or spending quality time with family or friends. When the level of reward chemicals drop below this new synthetic baseline, the absence now mimics something close to synthetic failure, depression, and desperation. As a result, you may feel uncomfortable emotionally and possibly physically. As you detox, these feelings may intensify as your body's been tricked into believing your survival now depends on nicotine. Withdrawal symptoms can start within 2 hours, since nicotine half-life is about an hour and a half, and lasts on average 2 weeks to 2 months, peaking 2 to 7 days after cessation. Physical and emotional withdrawal symptoms can include cough, fatigue, strong craving for nicotine, changes in appetite, irritability, anger, anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating, dizziness, restlessness, impatience, insomnia, headaches, sweating, constipation, chills, and more. Over the years, a common timeline of symptoms has been observed by many, but differs person to person. About an hour and a half after your last dose of nicotine, levels will begin to drop, and you'll begin to crave more. After 12 hours, strong physical cravings, irritability, restlessness, feelings of depression and hopelessness may present. At 24 hours, negative emotions like irritability and anger may increase. After 48 hours, many experience headaches and insomnia, and increased appetite. By day 5, the nicotine has for the most part left your body, and the cravings should be peaking by now. A cough may also develop as the lungs try to recover. At about a week, moderate and frequent cravings, mood issues, attention issues, and other symptoms may persist. By weeks 2 to 4, appetite will begin to stabilize, along with cough and negative emotions. After about 5 weeks into this journey, the physical and emotional symptoms will have dissipated or improved for the most part. People quitting nicotine should note, for years to come, triggering events or social settings may cause urges which will require a diverse toolbox of coping skills to maintain abstinence indefinitely. Although the biology of nicotine is complex, and the body's response to stopping abruptly makes it challenging to stay stopped, it's important you know a few things. First, not everyone will experience all or any withdrawal symptoms. Also, human brain plasticity allows the mind to readjust over time, and for the most part will improve cognitive functioning and regulate physiological changes caused by nicotine use. You could also take many steps to reduce the impact of these challenges by informing yourself of what's happening and developing productive coping skills to call upon when experiencing triggers and urges. Based on my experience personally and professionally, I feel chemical addiction is more appropriately defined by the term use disorder and happens when a person becomes accustomed to taking a psychoactive substance, thus causing the body to adjust to maintain homeostasis from the repeated use. This change in biology, in conjunction with social factors, pre-existing conditions, and more, makes stopping nicotine difficult and causes negative consequences in other life domains. In general, any use disorder impacts biology, causing tolerance, withdrawal, and desperation, while reducing activity in other areas of the brain responsible for complex thought and reasoning. This leads to problematic addictive behaviors, less problem solving, and reduced resiliency. By now, internal and external stimuli, also known as basic life experiences, cause unmanageable fluctuations in emotion, no longer self-regulated effectively when sober. Thus, the cycle of trigger, motivation, behavior, and short-term reward is reinforced, and the problem-solving and said resilience are greatly diminished. All this sets the stage for chronic relapse. All substance use disorders, including nicotine use disorders, are classified by professionals using standard diagnostic criteria like the DSM-5. While there are tons of free assessment tools and resources, I implore anyone at risk for a substance use disorder to check with a licensed clinician or medical professional for more information or an evaluation. That being said, basic criteria can include: if you or the individual experience intense or unmanageable cravings when not using or consume large quantities of nicotine over longer periods of time than intended. Also, if you have past previous attempts to quit, or if large amounts of time are devoted to using or acquiring nicotine. Further criteria may include if there are health and or personal consequences due to use, if important social or professional activities are sacrificed, or if there is hazardous use. Withdrawal and tolerance are also considered when determining any use disorder. If you are worried about any of these, it may benefit you to try and quit or seek help from a licensed professional. Although this all sounds like mostly bad news, worry not, because there are many things you can do to support your cessation efforts and start quitting today. If you stumbled upon this video, it's probably because you're one of the billion users around the world who feels quitting nicotine is impossible. I'm here to tell you, this is simply not true. You absolutely can stop using nicotine, and more importantly, you can stay stopped for good. These days, there are countless ways to quit, and you can likely be successful using many of them. But no matter which you choose, it's important not to give up and make it easier on yourself by taking steps to increase the odds of your success and decrease the odds of future nicotine use. To stack the odds in your favor and reduce the chances of struggling, you can first put some effort into learning what nicotine is and what it's actually doing when it enters your body. Hopefully you've already done this, as the information is readily available from many sources, including my other videos. Understanding nicotine can help explain physical and emotional changes, your personal rationalizations for use, help manage your expectations, and allows you to gain insight into your triggers, urges, and hopefully productive methods to maintain progress towards your goals when times get tough. It can also clarify reasons or explain why you're motivated to use nicotine continuously and why willpower alone may not be enough for anyone. Next, people can explore the benefits of nicotine. Why is it valuable to you? Why do you use it? And how is it helping? Although many would not think to do this, taking an internal inventory for your rationale is crucial. In my experience, personally and professionally, most people report nicotine helps them by regulating stress and negative emotions. Though, as a clinician, I've heard countless reasons. Some common ones include because it helps me relax, keeps me from gaining weight, gives me energy, breaks up my routine, gives me a buzzed feeling, helps me socialize, and of course, because I just like it. Looking at these specific justifications can be extremely useful when trying to make any change, as looking inward allows you to identify motivating factors and helps you build a customized toolbox of productive coping skills for a nicotine-free life. Analyzing these justifications and possible benefits may also help you decide if your thoughts are based in reality or if they are clouded by nicotine use disorder. Remember, nicotine has convinced your body into thinking it's important for your survival and required for you to feel good, when in reality, it just manipulates the chemicals responsible for these feelings. The truth is, most people who continuously use nicotine are just trying to avoid crappy feelings caused by a drop in nicotine levels. This happens because your body adjusted to the presence of nicotine and you are simply avoiding early withdrawal symptoms, which usually involves mood changes. Although most nicotine users who stop do indeed feel crappy, it's important you understand any negative thoughts or feelings are just temporary, will not last forever, and dissipate much faster than you think. After you finish your list of nicotine use benefits, you may find you've also highlighted possible obstacles which may impede future success. For instance, if you smoke or vape to reduce boredom or to kill time, how are you planning to address boredom and idle time in the future? If you smoke to socialize, how can you stop nicotine without causing isolation? Also, learning about your relationship with nicotine can help you build the skills needed to restructure those pesky, irrational thoughts which motivate continued use. You hopefully will learn ways to self-regulate and process these stressors, reducing the desire to consume nicotine in the future, and to also eliminate many of your hesitations to quitting today. I like to explain if you put all your energy into nicotine use as a primary coping skill, energy and time is diverted from problem solving, like increasing physical activity, improving time management skills, nutrition, your financial situation, or anything else to address the true source. We often find the problem was not removed by the nicotine, and when left unattended, stress tends to snowball. Eventually, by relying on nicotine as a quick fix and not learning new problem-solving skills, you may experience feelings of helplessness in this and other areas of your life, such as the hopeless feelings you get when thinking about quitting nicotine. Luckily, the more you self-regulate in the future, the less these negative feelings arise. People trying to quit nicotine should also try and think more critically about their motives, like how for the most part cigarettes don't keep people thin, and this was just a major marketing campaign for a large, or should I say thin, cigarette company. I know for me, I was heaviest back when I smoked. Keep in mind, for the most part, any initial weight gains are usually minimal and dissipate after a few weeks. I also ask questions to help put things into perspective, so people can see if nicotine is in fact helping or hurting them. My questions come in many forms, but essentially, imagine a common stressor and rate it in intensity. Boredom, money, socialization, routine, and so forth are all common examples. Then, imagine something like leaving the house, you pull up to work or school, and you realize you left the cigarettes or vape behind. How do you feel now? What is the intensity of this feeling, and can you survive the day? Many will find nicotine's absence impacts their confidence to get through the day, let alone thrive. Hopefully, people attempting to stop nicotine start to see how use may result purely from the psychological and biological stress of not having any nicotine. Facing this fear and being able to imagine a life without it is a vital step towards a nicotine-free life. I've mentioned triggers and urges a lot, as nicotine creates associations between your senses and other experiences quite easily. In this context, a trigger could be anything you see, hear, taste, or smell, which you associated with nicotine, and an urge is the desire to consume nicotine as a result. It can be as easy as seeing someone vape in person or even on TV, smelling cigarettes or a specific fruit flavoring, or simply hearing music you listen to during use. Remember though, you don't need to see or even be around anything at all to feel triggered. As if when you felt frustrated or angry, you tended to consume nicotine, these emotions will likely result in future urges as well. Basically, you must remember to address internal triggers, which arise from within you like boredom or anxiety, and external triggers, which arise from outside of your body like certain settings, sights, and smells. It's then important you create strategies to reduce and manage the resulting urges, as although first there is a trigger, and second there is an urge, third is the behavior, and that's what you have control over. You are, in fact, in control of your reactions to these triggers and urges, and hopefully your reaction is a productive one in alignment with your other goals. A common way people manage urges is by disassociating the original trigger in the first place. For me, each time I got an urge to smoke a vape or a cigarette, while in my home or office, I used fitness bands to do curls or did a few push-ups. Eventually, my brain realized the trigger and resulting urge for nicotine did not end in a rewarding dose of nicotine, but rather physical activity. This is just one example, but coming up with a productive plan which works best for you is another especially important part of quitting and staying stopped for good. Another critical phase is to become aware of why you want to stop in the first place. It can be common health concerns like risk of cancer, breathing problems, or pain in your respiratory system. Or you might just be sick of being held captive by a device or nicotine product. Nicotine might also be negatively impacting your performance professionally and personally, as well as your relationships, like with your spouse, your boss, kids, or parents. By looking at why you want to stop, you can essentially take stock of what you will gain from a nicotine-free life. These benefits are important for you to note because motivation and goal setting is a cycle, and like any literal or metaphorical cycle, you must first get it started and then build sustaining momentum. Listing goals is not only a way to get them out of your head and on paper, but increases the odds of success and acts as a reminder for you if you find yourself struggling in the future. You can create a small list of motivating factors for your wallet, phone, add it to a vision board, paint it on a wall, or simply put a sticky note on your mirror. If none of these were appealing, be creative because there are countless ways to help start and sustain your motivation cycle. In addition to the previously discussed wellness pursuits, it's possible and probably likely you may require additional help. This is absolutely okay, and the only problem would be if you did need extra help and gave up simply because you didn't pursue it. Furthermore, if you've tried something previously without success, it's important to be resilient and modify or continue your goal progress in a way that works better for you. If you found past attempts were unsuccessful, you should look at why. What led up to going back to nicotine, and how could you possibly have done things differently? It could be a few small changes, additional therapies, or you could change things up completely and start from scratch. The important part is you kept going to find what works. Although I'm about to talk about a few options, please understand most devices, medications, and therapies are to aid in your efforts and none are magical cures. Any treatment, product, or device is simply a tool you use to help facilitate your goals. Like any tool, they can either help or hurt depending on what you do with them, and should be used appropriately and under the supervision of a licensed professional. First, there are many nicotine replacement therapies like gums, lozenges, transdermal patches, nasal sprays, inhalers, mouth sprays, and some lingual products. NRTs are available over the counter and by prescription and are basically products containing specific levels of nicotine to help reduce withdrawal symptoms. As a result, triggers and urges may also decrease in duration and frequency so you can focus more on building coping skills for a life that no longer supports nicotine use. The idea is to start on a large dose and gradually decrease and eventually stop altogether. Some benefits include possible reduction in cravings and less physical withdrawal symptoms, but users should note any product containing nicotine could be addictive or abused. This may be why I've personally seen more success with products providing measurable treatment goals like a step-down plan. For my journey, I like the stable nicotine level of a patch, but some people may find better success with the ability to rely on gums or other options for their specific needs. There are many nicotine replacement products on the market, so it's important all of them should be used as directed and under the care of a provider familiar with your medical history. Many people choose to vape over smoking cigarettes, and other nicotine products, and in some countries the transition is used as a benchmark to signify success in cigarette cessation. As previously discussed here and in some of my other videos, the type of nicotine can determine whether or not the switch is effective for someone, and then their ability to stop vaping after they transition. Many individuals who vape freebase nicotine find it less satisfying but easier to stop completely, while nicotine salt users find it more satisfying and easier to switch to, but harder to stop completely. This may be due to the chemical nature of the nicotine, the levels of nicotine, or the way the body interacts with it. Like many nicotine replacement therapies, one should consult with professionals and be mindful of the delivery system is not causing more harm than good, like heavy metals and such. Medications can also be useful. Varenicline is a common medication indicated for nicotine cessation and acts by activating and blocking involved receptors to reduce withdrawal symptoms and the effects of nicotine if it's used again in the future. This hopefully decreases the reward and incentive to use. Bupropion, on the other hand, is a well-known antidepressant which can help nicotine cessation goals through activation of neuroreceptors and reducing the reuptake of neurotransmitters responsible for staving off withdrawal symptoms. These medications require a prescription, and you should consult with a medical provider as there are possible side effects. Behavior therapies and counseling approaches can also help you achieve many goals and work well alone or in combination with any other of the approaches mentioned. Cognitive behavior therapy is one of the most popular and is a specialty of many clinicians, or at least used alongside other modalities. Motivational interviewing is another approach which helps clients reduce their hesitations to quit and increases motivation to pursue wellness goals. It may also help point out behaviors which no longer align with their current goals and plans. Mindfulness is another commonly used intervention and is being just that, mindful of yourself and the environment to increase self-awareness and help reduce the intensity and impact of triggers and urges. Mindfulness can help adjust your relationship with cravings by decreasing their intensity and therefore nicotine's ability to dictate your behaviors. Lastly, reality therapy can help focus on problem solving and making better choices to achieve your goals and address irrational thoughts and behaviors by teaching new skills to maintain goal progress. These are just a few therapies out there, and most can be effective if performed or combined by qualified professionals or used in conjunction with other medications and interventions. Although these are just a few of the most popular treatments, many more therapies, devices, procedures, and medications exist, and more are being researched each day. So in closing, if I can give you any advice, it would be to start asking yourself questions like, what are you doing to help yourself quit today? What did you learn about yourself or nicotine? And how can you use it to make some changes that work for you? Do you realize change happens in the moment, and you need to make change when you feel the urge, not tomorrow, not after your last cigarette, or when your cartridge runs out? Also, what are some of the underlying triggers you experience? What drives you to keep using nicotine? Are you identifying these things and building the required life skills, coping skills, or productive activities needed to overcome them? What are your goals and how do they motivate you? What will you gain by quitting? How can you remind yourself of these things when you're struggling? How can you build a plan with small, measurable steps to get there? What are you doing to keep these goals fresh in your mind? And lastly, are you willing to stay flexible, resilient, and modify your plan if needed in the future? I hope this video was useful. Please hit the like button, feel free to comment with thoughts and suggestions, and subscribe for more interviews and other videos. Thank you, and stay well.